after that, if the time is flexible, if we think that the interaction is very fruitful and very flowing, so we can flexible for the time. And then after that, we will open for the student to have the direct discussion for you without the live or without the broadcast. So it will be in a class discussion later on, right? Okay. So yeah, great. So right now we have about 4 minutes to go. You would like to prepare something or what?
Yes, I think I will just start by thank you for the details about the students. So I will try to talk about something that might be personally interested. For example, last year, you tell me if it could be of relevance, but last year I mostly worked on the dengue fever epidemics in Southeast Asia, and one of the most difficult thing was actually to collect data from several countries in the region. So that was an interesting feature that I did in the medical world. I can talk about the challenge there and also the importance of talking about health. As for, okay, what can interest our Thai navigants?
Do you have any materials like pictures, PowerPoint that you want to share with the audience, or you would just verbally talk?
I was gonna finish my presentation on if people want to read independent media that I found interesting. I was gonna give them a list of media that are interesting in each country. But otherwise, I can send you maybe this article about the dengue, so people have an idea. Okay, where do I send things? The chat conversation. So how do I send the links?
You can send it where if it's you can use the meeting chat. Yeah, just drop it there. Then our team can get it from there.
Sarah saying that she's also connected now.
She's there.
Yeah.
So
Swadika. Swati from our international program of communication arts for ASEAN, Sukhothai Thammathirat Open University. We welcome you all again to our weekly Sunday live. That is our weekly forum to welcome you all to have sharing some idea, whatever about our communication, whatever about ASEAN, whatever about the media that is being used in our region of ASEAN and Asia. So we are very, very proud and very honored to have our honored speaker for tonight. She is the journalist who devoted herself for many years to work in our region of ASEAN and Asian kind of. So with our limited time for tonight, may I give the floor to our speaker tonight, Miss Laure Siegel. May you please welcome. Sawadika Laure. Yes, the floor is yours now.
Okay, Sawadika, hello everybody. So I'm Laure Siegel. I'm a French journalist, and I'm here based in Bangkok for 6 years. And I work for French, English, and regional media in the region about Southeast and South Asia. So the main events. The French don't have many people here, so we have a lot of countries to cover. And I work with a work permit and press card for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So Thailand is one of the only countries that gives the possibility to foreign journalists to work with legal authorization. So that is very, very useful for us, especially when we have to meet officials or to work on political events. So last year, I did a feature on the main risk that media in Southeast Asia were facing and the challenges over the last 5 years that have been mounting. So to say that the history of media in Southeast Asia is almost a century long, and now in the last 5 or 10 years, the main disruption was like anywhere else in the world. It was the switch to digital media and information. So I'm going to break this into 3 or 4 chapters of what are the main risk and challenge for media in Southeast Asia. And according to a survey by the International Federation of Journalists, the main issue for Southeast Asian journalists was the precarity of the industry. So the main issue is actually the working condition, because as you might know, most of the print and TV media have had to switch to internet-based platforms like Facebook and Google and YouTube, and basically they sold the content for free and don't get any advertisement revenue from it because Facebook and YouTube rack up all the advertisement revenue. So there is a grim economic situation for the, let's say, traditional media who couldn't manage the transition to internet. And this issue has far-reaching consequences, obviously, because when media lack resources to investigate or simply work or travel on the field, hire local fixer, the information is very poor and very centralized, mostly in cities. So the second issue is actually the laws that journalists have to work around, very sometimes hard laws, and they are evolving over the years. So most of the laws against, let's say, press freedom have been drawn from the colonial times. So all the defamation laws, all of this is a bad legacy from the British and French colonizer in Southeast Asia that were used against local intellectuals, that everything was a defamation, every critique. And these laws have been kept and used again by the government afterwards. And in the last 5 years, we have seen the shift of traditional defamation law, where you would go to court, to cyber law. So the whole fight has switched online, because the whole industry has switched online. So the legal battle is also mostly online now, and about cyber defamation. So that leads us to the third issue, which is a problem of safety for journalists. So the situation has worsened in the last 5 years in the whole region. There is no denial about this. One of the countries that we could talk about where it really got very wrong very quickly is actually the Philippines, and that the new government of Rodrigo Duterte, which has pushed for a lot of laws. And it has gone to the point where there is around 40 journalists who have been murdered actually in the Philippines in the last 5 years. So this is enormous, and it's one of the most dangerous countries to work in the world for journalists. And this for some decades. The Philippines, not many people know it, but it's also the site of the biggest killing of journalists ever. So in 2009, 35 journalists were following political candidates in the island of Mindanao have been set in a trap by the opponent team, and many media persons were killed on the spot there. And to this date, it's still the biggest massacre of media, and it's absolutely not getting better in this country particularly. So the problem of safety is a big one, and how we try to, and our responsibility is huge in terms of protecting ourselves, as well as our interview partners, and as well as our colleagues. So there is many things to think about before covering an issue. It has to be prepared according to the area and the people we will meet. We have to get a deep knowledge of the situation even before we put a foot there. We have to know the situation. And to go back to the fact that everything has moved digitally, we have to be careful in our communication. So there was many resources and workshops that happening in Bangkok regularly too, about how to protect yourself and your sources. So this is something we share among colleagues, to be careful with your email, with your communication, with a VPN, from so small thing, not using Wi-Fi in hotels, and at the same time be absolutely legit in whatever you do. So in every country I work, I ask for the right visa and paperwork, because this will be the easiest way to attack foreign journalists. It's usually on visa and issues that leads to your expulsion from the country. We share some of the same risks and challenges that local journalists from the countries here, but they also share. They also have much more risk if the foreign journalists are mostly threatened with being expelled and not visa renewal. For local journalists, it can go much more quicker into direct violence. So this is something we all have to be aware of. So when we work on election or things like this, we have to know what's the security situation, if we have to wait to be there. And there is a lot of coping strategies that also come over the years with the experience, because it's important to go step by step. in the severity of the topics we are looking. I don't think I would have been a great person to cover the election in India or Thailand at 20 years old. It's simply you just don't know enough, because there is a lot of personal maturity that will help deal with this stressful situation too. So I have been in pretty difficult situation, but you deal with it better and better over the years, and it's most important to keep you calm, but also not to see every. There is no enemy. Everybody is part of the story. So every story I do, I make sure that I try really hard to get also the official voice, because this is also on what we could be attacked, to be too partial to a certain point of view. So as foreign journalist for foreign audience, for the French, you have to add a lot of context, and the French readers are not interested by my opinions. They just want to know what's happening in Southeast and South Asia. So I really have to make the job to talk to everyone on one story. So I could maybe talk about the last feature I did of importance that was interesting for Southeast Asia. So last year I spent the whole monsoon season to work on the dengue fever epidemics in Thailand, Cambodia, and Myanmar, because we have the numbers were really high, and it was important to understand why. And mostly we focus on the impact on the most vulnerable communities, how it puts poor people into debt, just getting dengue, and the access to hospital. So we went to see all this really disenfranchised people who get dengue simply because the environment is not suitable to avoid this kind of disease, because it's only a question of development at the end. And but we also made sure to meet everybody from university and from the Minister of Health, and people from the BMA, how they work. So we follow a team with fumigation. We talk to academics who are working on a vaccine. And we talked to the Minister of Health to ask them about data, because one of the difficulties in those countries, not that much Thailand, which has a very strong health system, but the neighboring countries, it's really difficult to get facts and numbers, because the data collection by government is voluntarily or involuntarily very, I would say, there is a lot of holes in it, so it's difficult to get a big picture of epidemics numbers, of budgets, of numbers of hospital numbers, bed number of disease, because things are really counted differently. So I know that you are also studying communication among Asian region, and in terms of environment and health, I know that the fact that countries will share data, especially in time of epidemics like this, is absolutely crucial and necessary to lift the whole region. So you have some foundation and organization in different fields, like impact on dams for water, or impact of mosquito-borne disease, where we don't know any border. There is no borders for this issue. So if the government don't work together, it gets really worse. So there are some foundations who try to put data together. And in the COVID, we also saw that there was some kind of collaboration in the fact that Thailand stepped in at the beginning to help Myanmar with testing and things like this. And this is very important in terms of medical and environment sharing of data. So this is a challenge to get to the official numbers and opinion, but actually when we make the effort, really, you have to wait 2-3 weeks sometimes for a meeting. So you have to take your time for feature. It's things that cannot be done in 3 days. You have to respect the rhythm of the country, of the bureaucracy. So it takes time, but I take it because I think it's really necessary. And in terms of safety, we have to be very prepared, and it's important to be open. I never deny that I'm a journalist because this is how I get my work permit. I'm not doing anything wrong. It's still possible to do it here. So it's not denying it, but it's when we are confronted with authorities, it can be sometimes difficult in some areas. So I will tell you a story about India, for example. I went there also last year to cover the election. And I went to the east to cover the impact of big development factory projects on some communities. So I went to a village, and it's actually the area of India, I don't know if you're familiar, which has been plagued by kind of guerrilla, Marxist guerrilla movement against, so a conflict between this guerrilla and the army for a long time, for 20, 30 years. And some areas of this part of India were banned to foreigners till 2 years ago. So it's still very recent, very fresh. So it's you have to know this context. So there was this context. So I make sure that I work with a local translator who is from the area, who know all the language from the area, who know the people, who know the logistics, and who know how to deal with this kind of encounters himself. The idea was for us to follow a political candidate who is from a tribal background. So we call them Adivasi people in India, original tribal people who were, and it was the first generation of them entering politics last year. So I follow him on his campaign trail for 3-4 days. And after the third day, actually, a policeman in plain clothes come to my hotel and ask me who I am, what I'm doing. I say, you can look at my, I was there with a letter from my clients. I had all the necessary paper. But it's still difficult when the local authorities come in this intimidation to your hotel room. So they imposed, they say, okay, we are mostly worried for your safety, for the safety of foreign people in this kind of tense pre-electoral guerrilla environment. And we will assign to you a policewoman who will follow you everywhere. So obviously, this person is there to make sure that you don't talk to anyone. So obviously, it's not sustainable more than a few hours. So at one point, I asked, you have to keep you calm. It's obstruction to your work, but you are completely alone in the middle of nowhere. So it's important to get out of this nicely, and mostly to protect the people you work with. So at one point, I asked this woman to take me to the police station if there is a problem, and I will be happy to explain myself why I'm here. So they took me there, and I meet the policeman, and I tell him that I'm a journalist and that I work on cultural impact, which is not false, but it's not the whole truth neither, on communities before election. And he said, okay, but we don't want, he still said the same for the safety, it's not good you stay here too long. So obviously it was their way to tell me that I have to go out, and they just put me in a train in the evening back to the big city. So it was the best resolution, because you have to, it's always important to read the intention of the people. So do they want me out? Do they want to know what I'm doing? And in this case, they simply wanted me out because they didn't want to deal with this. So once you understand this, you just really go out as quick as you can, and you save yourself and the people who work with you. And I had enough material, but I had much more difficult encounters beforehand in other countries, and you just learn what's worth fighting for, which timing, and I'm mostly concerned about the safety of people I work with, because I will go back to my house after the article is finished, but these people will stay there in the village. So it's important that they don't get in trouble because of you. So all of this has to be really thought about, and mostly the important thing is to support the independent media and journalists of the region. So if you are more interested, I could give you a list also of the label independent information about the region. And our small contribution to this, because obviously the fact that we write in English will tighten the audience who will be able to read our reports. So when I'm finished publishing in French and English my reports, I usually give them for free to Thai Khmer and Myanmar media, so they can publish it in their language, and it open up the audience. So everybody has to do his bit, but I think it's also really important that the public opinion is aware that it's extremely difficult and grateful and dangerous job in the region, particularly, but everywhere in the world at the moment, which is mostly due to the rise of authoritarian government everywhere in the region or the world. So it makes, just to give you another example, it's I worked in every country, almost of the region, but some of them, like Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, is so as you might know, is one state party government for decades in these countries with literally no media. There is no media. Independent media in now Vietnam and Cambodia, so it's really difficult. And in Cambodia, it was a tragedy. It happened 2-3 years ago that most of the media that was still from the end of the war, Khmer Rouge time, have all been shut down by the government. So this was obviously a lot of consequences for the country. So I have worked in these countries. And it's in Vietnam, it's like Thailand, where we have to ask authorization to come in with a camera and to talk about things. So I was there to report on the Mekong Delta issue with climate change and dams and all these issues I have with water down there. And even this is a very political thing, because now the environmental activism is really seen as one of the most dangerous activism, because it's seen as anti-development, and development is usually state-sponsored initiative, especially in those countries. So the shortcut is really quickly done with being an environmental activist and an anti-government person. So this is a dangerous line that's always important to keep in mind. And in Vietnam, I did half of my interviews with 6 policemen in plain clothes who were following me everywhere. I'm just sitting in front of the house of the people I was interviewing. So it's very stressful. You have to deal with the situation. But it's very important to understand that it's not personal. I never took it personally. I do this with everyone. And it's not them who decide it. So it's not an emotional direct problem either. And we still have to work in the frame of these circumstances because the story still need to be told. So the important thing is to define what is the line of public interest and where you keep your personal safety, because most of things are of public interest, but the price to pay for it has always to be balanced. So I thought long about it, and I had a good team, and I said, okay, we can do this even under surveillance. So we did it, and we got a good answer. And for the, but obviously it's I never worked like this before. It was a dream to have 6 people following you everywhere. So it's really something you have to get your head around and continue doing your job without being overwhelmed by the situation. And in Laos, it's not just scared to talk, so it's difficult to find people who talk in their own name, which I understand, and it's important never to break this promise you make to people to not publish their name or their identity. It's a strategy like in India where you have to do in and out pretty quickly. There is some places where you can linger on, and there is some places that you have to know at which point you have to go. So usually it's a 3 days limit. After 3 days you move, so you don't stick out anymore. And it was the same issue about dams and development in Laos and what it does to people, and what is the public opinion about it. And the more, at the end, it's the more difficult stories about money, because what we learn in journalism school is that every story, the answer, you will get it if you follow the money. So every financial interest dictates most of stories. And so it's the same here. You have to put the line of how much you have to dig, how much is the job of other people to do that would be better than yourself. So, for example, there is stories that I don't feel skilled enough to touch, and I think other people than myself would be much more if they have a full command of the language, for example, or the cultural context. And I mostly see myself as somebody who bring factual information important about this region to a French readership, so they have more knowledge about the region. And at the same time, I try to support and work with the local media landscape, because it's really important that they get autonomous. And I will finish on one of the 4th issue that we have is related to the money. I started my presentation by explaining that the main problem is the lack of resources in media. And in Thailand last year, 800 people have been fired, mostly in the TV sector, and they have gone out as a union to fight against this, against the fact that they were fired with no compensation. So one of the important things is to not work alone, because you will never get far alone. You put yourself in collectives, in association. So even for our little community of French journalists in Bangkok. It's around 15, 20 people. We do different things. But even us, we have our little association because some of our members got into trouble, and it's important that they don't face defamation case alone. So it's important that we are all together. And I see more and more of this, of journalists who are unionizing and trying to fight for their working condition and freedom of speech. And one of the to finish on this, why it's important to fight so the ownership of the media stays more or less independent, because otherwise we see more and more efforts by the Chinese government to exist in the media of everywhere, but Southeast Asia being a prime target. So what's happening is that you might know that most of the newspaper have a subscription to news agency like AFP, AP, Reuters, and this agency, they provide content to many newspapers in the world against a certain subscription. So it's pretty expensive. I don't have the numbers, but it's $1,000s, $10,000s per year for this media to pay to have access to this content. And so the Xinhua, which is the Chinese state-run news agency, actually had this offer to give for free the content. So several media in Thailand, Cambodia, and Philippines, for example, took on the offer. And that means that, our traditional mainstream newspaper were filled with Chinese state-run news agency content. So on some issues, it's always interesting to have another point of view. But when there was for example, the Hong Kong protest, it was problematic in how the facts were presented. So in Thailand, it's Kaosod English who signed a partnership with Xinhua, and they actually explained themselves about it. And they said we need a source from different countries. We're in Asia. It's also important to have the China point of view, and I agree with it in a way. But it's also important to do a lot of media education, probably from school to university. So people can simply decipher where the news comes from and who owns it. Because to finish with this, if we have a situation where most independent media don't have resources anymore because people don't pay for it, no subscription and no advertisement. So you have the Chinese state-run agency who gives content for free, and actually they invest shares in several media groups across the region. And this is probably something that needs to be talked about in each region, that at least keep the ownership national medias, because it would have been enormous consequences of how your staff work and what they can say. And so I'm supportive of many media education initiatives in the region, and it's a knowledge that we constantly have to keep ourselves updated, because there are consequences of all of this for us on the field. So I think I talked a lot already, and
Yep. Thank you so much, Laure, for the very updated perspective of the media situation in our ASEAN region. I think that you have talked about the holistic of the movement in our media in our region. So I think that besides from the ICT, the raw regulation, the press freedom, the press safety, and even you come back to kinds of the local media landscape, autonomous, and finally about media education that can be more understood about ASEAN partners such as China or kind of that. So I think that the topic today is very quick to Ajahn Dalalat. She's very keen in this kind of media scenario. But before I give the floor to Ajahn Dalalat, may I introduce one of the consultant of our program. She used to be our international consultant of our program. May I introduce Salah Gabai? Are you there, Salah Gabai? Yeah, she's our fan club. Okay, so she's on the way, Salah Gabai, right? Okay. So during waiting for Salah Gabai, may I give the floor to Dalalat, please? Salah Gabai. Okay. Salah Gabai saying that her microphone doesn't work, so I give the floor to Ajahn Dalalat, please.
Okay. Thank you so much, Laura. Very interesting. The way the information that you share with us and from your real experience. I just have a few follow-up questions, if you don't mind. You mentioned about like the way you work, and I would like just to ask further whether because to produce the stories, it's like an investment, right? You need money, you need time, you need enough resources. How would that start? Like whether you invest first, because as a freelance, you pay to produce the story yourself, or you pitch with the editor in order to like secure some resources and buy-in from the editor, from some newspaper, and then you go to the field just to produce the story. That's one question. And also like within this current moment where we are all affected by COVID-19, and also like your movement is limited. So how can you still work within this limited or the circumstances, this kind of environment? That is about the work. And the second question would be, as a foreigner, you can be anywhere. You can go to work in Africa or in Europe, but why Asia? And how do you see ASEAN in particular? That's like it's draw your interest to work here and base here. As like and not really outside of you because you stay here for a big while. Why ASEAN draws your attention to the region? Thank you.
Okay. So I will start with the first one about the financing of my stories. Mm-hmm. So just for context, I'm doing this job for 12 years. I started in my local hometown newspaper in France, in the east of France, and it's a work in progress for sure. At the beginning, as a freelancer, you are too young and too inexperienced for anyone to give you just money to go somewhere. So you have to self-finance. Go there and try to publish as much as you can to get back your cost and use these stories for your own publicity to move to what the strategy I'm actually doing now, which is to choose the client who pay the cost for me. So it's always a struggle. It's always a war. You don't get anything back, but I work with people who give me most of it back. And if they don't, I don't do exclusivity for them. So if a media pay my cost to go somewhere, I will give them the story in exclusivity, at least in one language. And I will wait maybe 6 months, a year to put it somewhere else as respect for the investment. But if they don't pay for anything, I just publish my story 3, 4, 5 times in several languages. So I'm from the French-German border, so I can also work in German, and that's how you do it. But because I refuse as a it's one of the work ethics that we don't do this job as entertainment. It's not our pastime. It's a real job that should be under contract. And we have to talk about cost beforehand. So yeah, that's I'm now working mostly only under contract, and if people pay for my costs, the thing is that usually they pay after, so you still have to advance your budget. And the second, so that's one of the problems. So the second thing I'm doing is that I'm applying for some grants that are open to foreign journalists too in Asia. So, for example, when I work on environmental stories, I get the support from some stories from the Earth Journalist Network, which is a foundation which try to finance stories about the environment in Asia. So these people, it's great because they give you half of the money before, so you can actually pay people, prepare your trip, and the rest of the money when it's all published. So I try to work, like this, people who pay my cost or with grants. The limitation of COVID, it's the tragedy of my life this year, because I work for mostly the French readership. Thailand is not enough in a way, and I need to travel in other countries to have enough events and stories to tell over the year. And now I cannot go out of Thailand. And even inside Thailand, as you all know, it was difficult for a while. So at the beginning, I found myself stuck from March to May in the south of Thailand, actually, in the Gulf. And there I simply worked with what I could. So you stay a journalist everywhere. And I looked around me, and the most interesting story there was all the workers, mostly foreign, Burmese, Laotian, Cambodian workers who have been fired from the tourism industry in the Gulf of Thailand. And this is one of the biggest human interest story at the moment in Thailand, and especially in this region, who mostly relies on foreign workers to have this industry. So now it's thousands of people who are stuck there. So we can ask many questions about this. What do Thailand do with these people? What are the initiatives to make sure that these people survive this period? So I simply had to adapt, to cancel all my trips I had planned, and to focus on Thailand for this year. So I did this in the south, and just last week when we could travel again, I pursue my feature about water irrigation issue in Isan. So I went for a week in Isan to just before the monsoon season, to talk about the dams and water management issue and impact on communities. And it has also a link with COVID because, as you also know, many people in Bangkok are from Isan, and a lot of people went back. And what did they do there? A lot of them took over the farm again. So there is a societal shift. So to answer your question, you just have to work with what's in your hand and to be very adaptable. And so this year I'm focusing on Thailand and finally taking the time to take proper Thai lesson too. So it's the opportunity. And for your third question, why Asia? I was actually specialized when I was in France as a side thing. I had personal interest for a long time in the music and tattoo industry, tattoos. So I wrote a book about the links between politics, culture, and tattoo. And I came to Thailand for this, to write the last chapter of my book and to talk about the Sakyant and how sacred tattoo was important in Thai society as a part of my book. So I came in 2013 to do this, and it's the cliche answer of many foreigners, but you are struck by the beauty and good life and kindness of people, and I was thinking for a long time that I wanted to live abroad because I was always specialized in international issue. So before this, I spent most of my time in the Middle East, in Turkey, in Palestine, in Tunisia. And I have still a lot of attachment for this country, but at the time where I become a professional journalist, the revolution happened there. So it is important, but I didn't felt that as a very young female journalist, it would be safe or intelligent to go there on my own, because the working conditions were extremely hard, and a lot of journalists have been attacked in many aspects during this time there, and I didn't feel I had it to make it there, while Asia offered at the time, but still now, safest environment as a journalist, but also simply as a common person. It's just much more safe on many levels, as a woman too, obviously. And I saw Bangkok as the perfect hub. It's between India and China. It's the future of the world is in Asia, and I still convinced of this. I left my country because I felt that there was really a vibe of the end of something. The Europe is not in a good moment on every level, economic, political, social, and I didn't. It's difficult to look at your own society when it's crumbling. It's like, what do you add to all of this? And in Asia, I felt that for sure that there is many difficulties for people too, and some societies are stuck in many levels, but there is also much more dynamism in a way. And half of the world lives here. Most of the issue of our times are centered here, and so it was out of personal affection and professional choice, I would say, that it was a perfect place to talk about the world.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. I mean, I live in Chiang Khan, which is like an opposite side is Laos. Not very far from there, we have like a Tanakam Dam. So if you want more, let me know.
I'm going to Bangkok in August, so I will be happy to. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Dr. Kamonrat, I turn over to you to see if, we give the floor to others to ask questions as well.
Sure.
Yes. For tonight, I think there is some a little bit problem from the microphone side. But anyhow, I got a very impressive by the question and answer for Machandalalat that's asking about why Asia, right? And then you're saying that that is very, very, very attractive answer. So I think that some student would like to interact with you. Kun Wala from Singapore, right? You would like to say something, please?
Good evening, Laure. Nice to meet you. It's my pleasure. You are an excellent journalist. That I would like to ask you two questions. The first one is, what situation which impressed you when you work in ASEAN? And the second is, what is the situation that are suitable for the journalist would you like to promote in ASEAN region?
Okay, just the first question again. What situation in Asia to work?
To impress you, that make you impressing when you work in ASEAN.
Okay, so thank you for your question. And I would say that one of the easiest and nicest thing about the region is that there is not many people actually who refuse interviews, who refuse to talk to you. There is no hostility for most of the people. And I felt that if you introduce yourself properly in the language, most people will actually answer your question and welcome you for a long time. And I'm also extremely impressed by the patience of people. This is what I learned a lot here, that people are patient in the sense they will spend 1 hour, 2 hours. Some of the people spend 3 days just taking me to places just to show me. And I found I was really, really grateful. So with the time, people are very generous. And I feel that people are also very honest. There was no, you don't have, we have a word in France, which is your tongue is made of wood. And when your tongue is made of wood, you don't tell the truth. You try to hide the truth by nice words. And I actually felt that here, when you ask the right question, people will be very straightforward and tell you what's happening. So that was impressive. And I'm very impressed by my Asian local colleagues, journalists, because I know what they are paid. The wage are very low in some of the countries. For example, in Nepal, a radio journalist who will go from every village to make a daily program, these people will be pay maybe $100 per month for a really hard job, physically, intellectually. So I'm impressed by the determination with so few money. And also that actually a lot of people, it's something I discovered in Thailand, the community radio, that actually many people don't need, it's not that they don't need the media, but they make their own media. And in rural areas, I think this is really the answer. So community radio and to answer also your question about what impressed me, we were talking about dams before. I don't know if you're aware that 2 years ago, there was an accident with a dam in Laos that broke and a lot of villages were flooded. And as I said, it's very difficult to report for foreign journalists in Laos, and the army blocked the area. So 2 women from the village nearby, they went into the area to talk to people, to explain what was happening, because they were Laotians, they speak the language, they are from the area, so they can talk to the police force. They were let to enter, and they came out with a report that was in Laotian as well as in English, in a big media, and they were the only journalists to have written a report about this big event ever, because they were the only one who can access it. And this was extremely courageous, and they give a lot to all of us, because without them, we would not know what had happened there. So it's the patience in some countries where the situation is very bad for a long time, and people will still give you interviews, will still have something to hope for. We still fight for their rights. So it's the patience and the courage, that I was very impressed with.
Okay, thank you so much. Your answer is very clear.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that Sarah Gabai, our previous international consultant, has joined us. Sarah, are you there? Okay. Are you there, Sarah? She's there, but
I'm talking to her too on Messenger, trying to tell her that we are trying to reach her. Is there a way to send her a direct message? Or?
yeah.
She's speaking. She's telling me that she's speaking. So maybe it's
she's speaking, but maybe because she used the MacBook or can be any.
It's working, but
okay. Yeah, but anyhow, I think that since time is quite late, and then I think somebody sent a message.
Yes.
Salah, you can type the question here. Next time, Salah has joined us since at the beginning, but maybe next time Salah can join us, and then I also would like Laure, please join us too. If you have you have some of any update, please feel free to join us, because this forum is the forum that we would like to interact and then share the idea of what is happening up, because all the students and our network is trying to catch up whatever happening in our region. So we are very proud and then very happy to have you with us. So some points from Connie, from Ajahn June, or anyone else, please. Sushat, if you would like, please. Yes. Yes, please.
For me?
Yes.
For me? Yes. Good evening, Laure.
Good evening.
May I ask you for 2 questions?
Yes.
As for first one is as the role of a journalist, what do you think about ASEAN issue should be presented in order for people in regions to awareness and realize that ASEAN is close issue, not just for movement of leader and business. And a second question is, are there any important law to protect journalists from influence of regional factual reporting? Thank you.
Thank you. So for you first question about how can Asian can be about something else than just business or leaders, as you said. In my opinion, I would say that the youth movements, as well as the environmental issue, are something that between countries should we really be talked about, because I see many of the same problems in the country of the region, and the borders between region, as we know, don't always the Mekong River goes through 6 countries, so it's not one country problem. So, for example, I really think that issues like climate change and water, natural resources, and who has the right to land and to forest, fishing, overfishing, these issues should be really talked about among countries. And the way to do it is to have online forum and to have also information that is translated in many regional languages. So that would really help to connect people together, to know that they are facing the same issue, but also that some great people have some great ideas that could be used in other countries. So I think Asian, in terms of what to do with the young generation and the work opportunities, as well as preserving the environment, which is extremely important to ensure food security, because it is necessary that Asia preserve the environment. Otherwise, there will be a problem of food production. So this is something Asian should really talk about. And the way to do it, maybe forum, maybe a newspaper exchange of information. I know that Thai people especially are very active on Twitter, so apparently it's the way to reach to other countries and other people. Exchange of students would be also nice, because you're right, it should be about something else than just leaders. And I think if people become aware that they share the same issue, the same challenge, they could really create something nice. And for my second question, is there a law to protect press freedom? In Thailand, the problem is that the law that protect press freedom less strong than the law that forbid journalists to do something. So the defamation law, or there is a lot of things we cannot talk about in Asia about some. It can be from the monarchy to some borders area to some business interests. So it's really difficult to get around this. And there is no law that will ensure press freedom, because the law against it are more stronger. But what was interesting is that, for example, in Malaysia, Malaysia Kini, which is the most independent media in the country, they push for a project to have an independent council of journalists and media. So that will mean that no political and no business interest can have any say in this council, in this group, which is there to protect the journalists in the country. So the goal is to do it in Malaysia, and obviously to give the idea to other journalists in the countries around. So this is what we should aim for. An independent council of media where there is no interference from the justice or the politics of big business. And this is something that could happen in the countries to protect us. And obviously the international noise, we can call it like this, but when big cases happen in Thailand or in Philippines of journalists being attacked, or if many media and many people talk about it around the world, it makes a difference, because it scares government a bit. So the last case we had is about this woman, Maria Ressa, in the Philippines that I mentioned earlier. And she had 20 years career at CNN. She went back to the Philippines to create the most interesting independent media. And every year she's being attacked by the state, and she has to go to court. And last week she was condemned to 6 years of jail. So this is very bad. This is something we are all very concerned about. But there was many articles about her. And if there is enough pressure, we hope this woman will be safe from jail. So put the pressure. Yeah, that's my. If the law is not there, you put the pressure by waiting for the law and the media council.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, we have some question from Facebook, right?
Okay.
You see that from the chat room. In your perspective, as you are non-ASEAN, do you think that the ASEAN country will realize the integration plan among the ASEAN member country?
I don't know if my opinion is of relevance, as I'm not a politician, but obviously what was done, I come from Europe, and I'm the first generation to have lived fully in the European Union almost since I was born. So in the 90s, it was really put together, and it was a beautiful thing to grow up in a continent where we have the same currency. Some people will tell you that they lose a lot of the savings, but still, we have the same currency. And the borders, I come from the east of France, and with my bicycle, I can cross to Germany, Switzerland, Belgium, Luxembourg, just by crossing. So this is a wonderful thing. And when we were kids, we had a lot of exchange. One thing that was important is that around 7, 8 years old, you have to learn all the names of the country in Europe, all the names of the capitals, and the basic history of each of this country. And this I thought was really helpful. And for me, this would be a first step. And I wish for Asia to have some kind of solidarity union, because it's a great way to function, and you can give a lot of each other among countries. And it has to start at school. For us, it was really at school. At 6, 7, we had to learn the capital of Croatia. And it was a great break from the generation before. So maybe one of the first steps is really, as I said before, about Asian too, to know about each other, to know about the country, what they were in common, to know the basic history of each country, to be more sensitive to other people's lives. And I hope the Asia can make some sort of union. China and India are already so big, so make them part of something else. I don't know if this is really possible, but maybe the rest of the country, which are not India and China, were already too big for their own good. But a federal union of the rest of Asian country, I think, would be a wonderful idea in terms of borders and knowledge between people. Yeah.
And that is no wonder why you got a very similar background in kinds of your neighboring country, that you can simply crossing like in our ASEAN member country, right? Okay, I think that the time is quite late, and then we will come to the last question from Sushat. Sushat, do you have some interaction to Laure, please?
Yes, I have some question to ask. I think there are some sensitive issues that is very hard for the media to cope with. So I would like to know that how the media should perform or behave if they have to talk about Rohingya and some territorial disputes in the South China Sea.
That's a very good question. The first thing, you will know about it if you can go there. That's the first thing. So if you can go there, I will make if I can go there, if I have the authorization to go there, I will make my best to talk to different parties, to everyone. But if I cannot go there with the Rohingya people after 2018, 19, it became very, very difficult for foreign journalists to enter because there was never any authorization. So then is the local Myanmar journalists who are only able to pass through. And the risk about this is it's another drama that was in our profession. We have 2 Myanmar journalists from Reuters, from this news agency, who got arrested for 500 days because of a report. So the dramatic thing is that it's 2 or 3 people who will be targeted for this. But to answer your question, there is a lot also that can be done by talking to now we have digital tools. So if you cannot go there, if you cannot go to the border of Myanmar, or if you cannot go to China, you work with satellites. So a lot of investigation actually now is done by satellite and digital tools. And to make it will always be sensitive, but you have to be careful to just say the truth. So at least you cannot be attacked on defamation. And as a freelancer, you have to really think, can I do this alone without a lawyer? Or should I give my story to a big media who will have the capacity to defend themselves? So Reuters, they had lawyers, and that's how they managed to get the journalist out. But it's still a very high price to pay, 500 days in jail. So for the South China Sea, I've not looked at it myself properly, but I know that some of the things you will write, you will be subjected to online harassment and trolls. So this is a big problem also for journalists in Asia who are they get death threat, rape threat, everything very, very hard, because it's paid army of trolls who are jumping on every report that doesn't go towards their way, and you are at the end of this. So you have to be sure that you have the barriers to protect yourself from this. But it's really our responsibility to go back to the Rohingya people. It's an issue I'm following from the beginning, actually, from 2015, where the first boats were on the sea of Thailand and Malaysia, and no country wanted to take them in. And this, even if it's sensitive, it's our responsibility. It's not something, when 1 million people are impacted, it's not something that we cannot talk about. So we just need to find a way to do it with our own safety, with their safety. But from a European or from my readership, it's something they want to know about, because there is a significant Muslim population in France, and it's a subject that they are interested in. And I will just finish on this. For example, it's always important to choose your timing to talk about it. When you are the first, it's horrible. You are on the front line and everybody shoots at you. So you have to wait that the first story come out. So I was in Yangon in Myanmar for the election in 2015. So you might remember that it was the first election for 60 years after dictatorship. So it was really important for Myanmar people. And but what was interesting is that most of these minorities, and the Rohingya included, didn't have the right to vote. So because they were not considered as citizens. So in most of the media, you had this incredible joy and enthusiasm about Myanmar election that I was sharing too. So always a good thing that people can express themselves. But at the same time, you had millions of people who were not able to vote. So you can point this out. And I was walking in Yangon on the day of the election, and Rohingya people were scared and shut themselves into their flats because they were scared of any kind of Buddhist uprising or demonstration of joy. And I am not from any of these communities. I am not from any of these countries. So I just look at it in a very neutral point of view. When you have 1 to 2 million people impacted by the inability to vote, you have to mention it. So it depends for who, I would say, for who you write to. I know that for the French, I cannot not say it. It would be a mistake. But I understand that for some regional issue, sometimes you have to choose your timing. It's more sensitive, and the media here are subjected to much more pressure. My newspaper in France is in court every week because they do the same. They take the journalists to court, and so we are in court every week for defamation. But we have good lawyers, we have a good team, and we never lost any of the case. So you just have to be sure of who is behind you. So for a local media, it's difficult because they might not have the resource to defend themselves. But if it's my choice, I talk about everything. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bro, I would like to say that you are exactly professional journalist because you have a lot of direct experiences in our ASEAN media world, and then beside from that, you also have absorb a lot of ASEAN culture and kindness. We are very honored to have you to work for our ASEAN region. Ajahn is quite late for tonight. You have any kinds of wrap up for tonight before we end the session?
Okay, I will tell you a last nice story about this exactly. When I arrived it was not easy for me as a choice to stay here, but now I would say that if I'm allowed to, I think I want to spend most of my life in Asia. And one interesting story is that I arrived properly in 2015, and 2 months later, I went to Nepal to make article about Chinese interest as well as tourism business around Everest and in the Himalayas, which is a big thing for local people there, the main economy. So I walked in the Himalayas for 2 weeks. It was really hard. And I come back to Kathmandu, and there was this massive earthquake that you might have heard about or remind. So after 3 months in Asia, I got caught in a massive earthquake, and it was really horrible on many levels. I was really shaken because not on a spiritual level, but it's okay. Do I stay here because it's really hard? What happened to you when you are freelance? It's really difficult. I spent a week in Kathmandu with $5 before I could make my way back to Bangkok. It was extremely stressful period. So I was just a bit lost, and I was walking around in Lumpini Park in Bangkok, and I met a fortune teller woman. So it's obviously not my culture or belief, but I'm open to anything. And she just sat next to me, and I asked her, I told her about myself a bit, but not much. I didn't tell her about the earthquake or anything. And I just asked her, do you think I should stay here in Asia? Do you think this is for me, or I will just die in the next natural catastrophe? And she said, no, you have to stay here. It's good for you. You have to stay in Bangkok and keep I don't remember exactly how she said, but she said you have to believe in it and hang on to it, and you will get some kind of relief and satisfaction later. But please stay here. It's made for you. And I wouldn't say that it's most of the reason why I stay here, but I said it's a part of the reason. I always remember this woman, and she said, no, you have to stay here. Keep going. It's okay. It's good for you. So I'm very grateful to what I got on a human level here. Hope I grew up as a better person. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Dandalala, you have some wrap up?
Not really. It's a little bit late, but I just hope that after this session end, but if our students would like to contact you for more information or some comments, I hope you're open for that.
Yeah, sure. You can share my email and WhatsApp, and I'm very happy to exchange about this. Thank you for the invitation.
Wonderful. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laure. Thank you so much, Chandalalat, and thanks for all of the audience. We are really fruitful for tonight because of the exactly direct experience from you, Laure, and then hope that we will have a chat together again. ขอบคุณมากค่ะสวัสดีค่ะ
so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next session, we will stop live now, and then we will jump into the class. Yes. Any reaction from the class? Yes, please go on. Please go on. Please go on.
So, are you still here, Laura?
This streaming. Just gone.
Will the freedom of journalists gonna be in the future? Any problem will reduce or still the same in 4G era?
Okay. Yeah, I will answer first, and then Chandalalat might help me. In the key characteristic of the 5G is AI. Is more on automatically, is more on the digitization. So meaning that the roles of journalists and even the communicator wherever in the world will be more easier, and even difficult is like